welcome to Empty Suitcase with Archer Flamingos, a podcast featuring honest conversations around productivity, creativity, and agility for those working in and navigating the digital space. So, that's basically everyone these days. Born into a family of athletes, the tennis racket was placed in Sujay's hands at the age of 3. Years later, he was running on a tennis court for a minimum of 8 hours a day, often starting before the crack of dawn. This set the tone for the first 2 decades of his life. After winning both the under 14 and under 16 championships in '99, his aim was to work with some of the best coaches in the world in the most competitive environments. Owing to a wrist injury at age 19, he was left with few options but to quit the sport. Riddled with doubts as his dreams shattered along with his wrist bones, he returned home. The next 2 years were spent in hedonistic pursuits, which eventually led to a car crash which served as a much-needed wake-up call for Sujay. Today, he's a certified breath coach, personal trainer, sports nutritionist, as well as a meditation and mindfulness teacher. He has acquired knowledge and experience with regard to training the mind and body while using nutrition, breath, and recovery over the last 3 decades from some of the best coaches in the world in some of the most competitive environments. This gave him first-hand experience in the subtle art of imparting accumulated knowledge. Sujay aspires to share this knowledge for free, particularly with those involved in contributing to changing the world through social innovation and environmental conservation. Sujay is set out to train actors in the social impact space for absolutely free for a period of 6 weeks. He launched an initiative named Mind the Breath, focused on upskilling these warriors defending our future. His aim is to provide them with the best holistic approach towards health, fitness, and wellness in order to maximize their performance and longevity. The better these human beings perform and the longer they're able to do it for, the higher impact they will have within their mission and vision spectrum. Hi, Sujay. Thank you so much for coming on this special episode of Empty Suitcase. We are super excited for our conversation.
It's my pleasure to be here.
So I'm going to jump straight in and ask you, as a professional athlete, what helped you develop the connection between clarity of mind and body with consistent performance?
So, consistent performance, it comes from great preparation and it does take a lot of hard work. The clarity and the connection between mind and body is something that I've personally had to work very hard on, and it did take a while. I do believe that one has to adopt a very holistic approach towards health, fitness, and wellness. I believe in training five different aspects. One is the physical aspect, under which we have strength, speed, stamina, flexibility, mobility, range of motion, explosive power, and things like this. The second one would be the meditation aspect, wherein there's a concentration, focus, visualization. Third would be the breathwork aspect. An emphasis is placed on stress management, awareness, and mindfulness. The fourth one is the nutritional aspect, meal timings, frequency, quantity, and the types of food that we eat as well. The last and not the least one would be the recovery aspect of training, wherein we monitor our sleep timings, the duration, the amount that we sleep. We place the emphasis on active recovery days, full recovery days. We also focus a lot on massage and recovery of the muscles and the skeletal structure. So I believe that continually applying all these aspects of training into any program and custom tailoring that to each individual over the years will definitely help with this mind body connection. Now, another aspect that helps anyone, I believe, derive this clarity between the mind and the body is to continually explore different practices, different forms of movement, such as yoga, rock climbing, cycling, or learning how to play an instrument, or open water diving, whatever it may be. Any kind of activity that involves learning how to use the body, mind, and the breath in ways that we aren't usually accustomed to. What this does is it creates new neural pathways in the brain, and it facilitates neuroplasticity. This allows our minds to stay flexible, and it helps us retain the ability to learn. And as the mind learns, the body learns from the mind. The body then also becomes much more adept at receiving signals from the mind. So I believe that taking this kind of a holistic approach, as well as exploring different forms of movement over time, kind of being a child, never stop being a child, keep learning, keep being inquisitive about different things. That's what really helps you find that clarity between the mind and the body.
You emphasize clarity. Why do you think clarity is important for performance?
So, in order to perform consistently, one must really, really want it from deep inside. You must really want to achieve whatever it is that you've set your goals upon, that you've set your heart and your mind to, because you need to be fully, fully present there. If your heart and your soul is not there and you physically turn up, that's just not going to be enough. So, in order to achieve anything, we need to bring our A game to the field, especially in this highly competitive environment that we live in right now. Even if we do come well prepared and if we worked really hard, you might not be able to come up with enough in order to beat your competition. You might not be able to beat the system. So it's extremely important to be clear about your goals, about the person that you are, about who you want to become, how you want to get there, in order to be able to wake up every single morning and work really, really hard towards giving yourself a genuine shot at success. That's one reason why clarity is important. I think another reason is if you're not super clear about what it is that you want and where you want to get, sometimes we go through ups and downs, we go through failure. And when we fail, it's easy to get distracted and be led down a road that doesn't really resonate with us. And the last thing we want to do is end up dedicating years of time, effort, and money towards a goal that doesn't really bring us contentment. So, in that sense, clarity is extremely important.
Why is performance and longevity the most important factor when it comes to success in any field?
So, this is a great question. We've touched upon the performance aspect a little bit. The longevity aspect is as important because if you really want to achieve something notable in your field, whatever it may be, it's extremely important to perform for a long, long time, longer than your competitors, ideally. So if you look at any of the greats in any field, and I'd like to draw comparisons from the world of sport because that's where I come from. If you look at Nadal and Federer, for example, they both have won 20 Grand Slams each, and that's a world record. The reason they've done this is not just because they're phenomenal athletes who started winning really early, but also because they have won for longer and they've been around and they're competing at the highest level for longer than anybody else, any of their contemporaries. And it's a similar situation if you look at Michael Jordan in basketball, for example. He is considered the greatest not just because of his performance over a decade, but it was, I think, over a span of 2 decades or so. And if you look at business people, in the world of business, what happens is most people in their 50s, that's when they're peaking. That's when they have the most amount of knowledge and resources, experience, and contacts. But it is in their 50s also that they start to face many issues with regard to their health, physically, mentally, emotionally. They're not able to quite deal with as much as they used to be able to deal with. So these same people, if they can give themselves another decade or another 5 years, at a time at which they have the most amount of knowledge, resources, experience, and contacts, that's when they surpass everybody else in their particular field that they consider competition. So it's really important, if, especially if you want to leave a mark, to achieve something that will stand the test of time. One needs to not just achieve success, but also achieve longevity in success.
Yeah, absolutely. We've definitely covered on why this is important, why clarity is important for performance, and why clarity also leads to performance and longevity. Moving on, I want to touch on how we can incorporate this into our lives, especially given the work from anywhere policy a lot of companies are opting for. More often than not, people find an imbalance in the work life dynamics and a lack of clarity in differentiating between these two fundamental aspects in our lives. How does one maintain performance when using the same space for work and leisure?
It's a very good question. I think it's very pertinent to our lives right now. And one of the best ways to do this is through prioritization. It's extremely important for us to understand and become aware of how important it is to segregate the times at which we work and the space that we utilize for work and the space that we utilize for leisure. And we must set boundaries. I think one of the best ways to go about doing this is to set boundaries and say, from this time to this time, I'm not going to work. I'm going to dedicate this part of the day or this part of the evening towards my life, my personal life, my social life, my health, fitness, and wellness. And coming up with the right routine and setting these times is extremely important. One needs to be practical and honest and say, look, I can dedicate an hour and a half towards things aside from work. Because if you come up with a routine that entails spending 4 hours a day not looking at your laptop and doing work, it might be a bit impractical. It really depends on your line of work and your lifestyle. But setting that routine, a practical routine, and sticking to those, not crossing those boundaries, is very important. The other thing I believe in is it really is a perception. I've in the recent past seen quite a few people adapt to this whole work from home or work from anywhere environment, and they seem to be getting a lot more done. They seem to be a lot happier, spending a lot more time with their families, dedicating a lot more time towards their health, fitness, and wellness. And then there's another set of people who haven't seemed to be able to make that change or set those priorities and stick to those boundaries. So it's a matter of perception. We can use this as an advantage, staying at home and working from home and spending so much time where we are so close to our working environment and our relaxing environment. So it's a matter of perception and setting those boundaries.
Absolutely. Setting boundaries, that's something that's easier than done, but so important.
Mhm.
I think our next question is our billion trillion dollar question.
Right.
How can we avoid burnout in an always on environment?
uh, yes. So I don't believe in the concept of an always on environment. In fact, I think there is a huge flaw inherently in this concept because it's not possible to be always on and still perform. It's not possible to be always on and stay healthy. We need rest, we need recovery. It's as important as any other aspect of life and of training. I don't believe that any creature on the planet is meant to be always on. And I like to use dolphins as an example because we as human beings, we have an autonomic nervous system which allows us to breathe and for our hearts to beat automatically. Dolphins don't have this autonomic nervous system. They have to manually switch off one hemisphere of the brain so that the other side, the eye, can stay open and they can continue breathing. And then after this hemisphere of the brain gets rest, they switch and switch off the other side of the brain so that the right eye, for example, can stay open and they can continue breathing. So we really need to understand that taking time off is as important as anything else. And just because we turn up somewhere doesn't mean we are able to do our best, right? For example, most car accidents occur because not because the person's leg or hand suddenly stopped working. It's because the person who was driving, their brain stopped working. They either fell asleep or were so tired that they were incapable of making the right decision in the right amount of time. And that led to them crashing. Similarly, we don't want to crash in our lives in a meeting or at work or wherever else it may be. So that's, I think, one of the most important aspects to keep in mind. We cannot always be on. Another example that I like to use is, again, I'm drawing from sport because that's where I come from. If you look at any team sport or any competitive sport, management usually takes that decision. They look at the calendar for the entire year and they say there are 18 tournaments that we can enter. We are going to choose to enter 15 tournaments and do our best in these. Their mission is not to enter 18 tournaments and try to score as many points and end up on top, simply because if they do that, then their players will be overworked, they will be susceptible to injury, their performance is going to drop. So instead, what they say is, let's look at how much we can do efficiently and try to do our best and try to end up on top of the table. This really works, being selective and being disciplined about where you want to put your 100% effort and when you want to relax and rest and recover. Another aspect I like to touch upon is, in this time off, when we take this time off, if we choose not to always be on, we get to spend that time not just recuperating and recovering, but we also get to work on our weaknesses in this time. For example, if someone is not very good at sales, over the weekend, if you take some time off and you end up even just playing simple little games like poker or Monopoly or something, you're learning how to sell something while having fun. So when you come back on Monday, you brought a little something that you didn't have to the table. You're not just well rested, you've worked on some other skill, a weakness of yours. So you're bringing more to the table once you take that time off if you're not always on.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more. Even I believe in taking some time off, because otherwise, what happens is, I mean, it's not that it's impossible for us to constantly be in front of our screens, except for when we're sleeping, but that also means that we're constantly in someone else's ideas.
Yeah.
You have to take some time to, kind of go into your ideas. And that happens only when you're not looking at someone else's. And even constantly living in other people's ideas can also lead to burnout.
Yes.
So I think what you said is applicable in almost every aspect, maybe driving a car or sports or marketing and media. Thank you so much for that answer. I think, it's going to be really helpful for a lot of us.
I hope so. I
Um,
hope so, yes.
moving on, what is your daily routine?
So my daily routine involves waking up really early. It's something that I've worked on over the years. It doesn't come very easily, but now it has become a habit. So I wake up really early and I dedicate the first couple of hours or maybe even 3 hours of the morning to going inwards and then maintaining my mind, my body, and my emotions, my breath. I usually start with a mindful meditation in the morning, followed by some light movement. I like to go to the park in the morning and listen to a podcast while I'm there. I come back, I usually do some journaling and planning. It's only after this point that I check my messages or my emails or whatever it may be. And then I usually teach classes, move on to breakfast, some amount of meal prepping for the rest of the day or for the next couple of days, followed by work. And in between work, I stop for lunch and I make sure that it's a mindful stop for lunch. It's a conscious stop for lunch. I I don't eat my food while reading emails or while having a conversation. I stop everything, focus on my food, and then get back to work after that. I usually end the evenings by teaching a class and then a strength session. I like to lift weights in the evening instead of doing that in the morning. In the morning, I prefer lighter movement like yoga. And after my strength session, I take a cold shower and have dinner. And then I have my nighttime routine, which involves not watching Netflix or Amazon or whatever it may be in bed, because I find that I fall asleep much quicker if I don't do that. I also get a better quality of sleep. So I usually might read something while I'm in bed. And the last thing I do after I close my eyes is a small session of breath work that allows me to switch from being on to a more relaxed state, promoting rest, relaxation, and digestion. Sometimes I even fall asleep while doing this practice.
That's amazing. 3 hours inward. That means I was just calculating. That means I have to wake up super early. um,
Yes, that is a very important aspect of giving yourself time in a day. Because all the people that I coach, not all the people that I coach, but most of the people that I coach tell me that they don't have enough time. They don't have an hour, or they don't have an hour and a half to dedicate towards themselves. And I always ask them to give me a detailed plan, or rather a detailed list of things that they do from the moment they wake up till they go to sleep. So I have a very good idea as to what they're doing every single hour of the day. And when they tell me, no, I actually don't have time to do this and this and this, I point it out to them and say, look, you're watching far too much TV. It's about 2 hours of Netflix. If you just cut that down by half, you will have an extra hour, which is 60 minutes to dedicate to yourself. The answer really is there. We just kind of have to see it and move a couple of things around, prioritize our schedule in a manner where we allow ourselves that time in the morning to go inwards.
Absolutely. I'm definitely going to try this 3 hour. I have a 2 hour system, but I think I want to know what that extra 1 hour is going to do. I'm sure it's going to be more beneficial.
Yes, you
Um,
must.
what would you recommend for someone who's looking to make a change?
This is a very good question. There are many aspects to making a change. As we discussed earlier, a holistic approach is very important. So, first thing I would recommend is, if someone wants to make a change, avoid looking at it from a perspective of, I'm only going to change the way I move and start working out, or I'm only going to change the way I eat and go on a diet. Let's look at it holistically, and try to bring about a change in all aspects of life. So the first aspect I would, or rather the first suggestion I have for someone who's looking to make a change, is to come up with a nice program. Make yourself a nice program, a nice plan, and start logging all your workouts and your practices. So sit down, reach out to somebody if you have to, someone who's good at this, someone who has some experience, and seek their advice and come up with a sound program that touches upon all these aspects of training. And try in this program to include 2 sessions of movement. Try to move once in the morning and once in the evening. The reason I say this is because that movement session in the morning really gets your blood flowing, it wakes you up, it energizes you, it gets you ready and prepared for the day. It also takes that pressure off of you. In case you miss that session in the morning, you've got another opportunity in the evening to make up for it. So in case you miss that session in the morning, the whole day is not gone. And the other advantage that you have with doing 2 sessions is, you can, for example, follow your passion. If endurance running is your passion, you can run in the morning and you can do something complementary in the evening. You can work on strength, mobility, things like that in the evening. So it takes that pressure off. If you try to pack everything into one session, all your exercise and movement into one session, it can be a little bit daunting for some people. It can end up putting a little pressure on you. So make a sound plan and try to involve 2 sessions of movement, would be my first recommendation. Second, I would say mix it up. Try not to do the same thing 5 or 6 times a week. I know a lot of people who are very into high intensity interval training, which is very effective. I am a huge proponent of it as well. However, I would say mix it up. Don't do only that 5 times a week, because it can get boring, it can get monotonous. It also primarily focuses on one aspect of training. So instead, do high intensity interval training maybe 2 or 3 times a week, or if you really like it, do it 4 times a week. And 2 or 3 times a week, do some yoga. It focuses more on the flexibility, range of motion, and mobility aspect of training. The other reason is, when you mix it up, you end up discovering new forms of movement. You might discover a sport that you really like. And there's nothing better than that, because once you discover a sort of movement that you really like, or a sport, it's really not a matter of dedicating enough time in a day for it, but it's trying to stay away from it and trying to get enough work done, because you end up falling in love with it. So, third, I would say, take your activity outdoors, whatever it may be. Try and take it outdoors, because we all are spending so much time indoors, especially this year. And if you go outdoors, and be it a run, or throwing the frisbee around in the park with your friend, whatever it may be, go outdoors, get some fresh air. There's nothing like being out in nature. There's so many health benefits to that as well. It also gives you an opportunity to get a change of scenery, as opposed to, as we mentioned before, working from home, leisure from home, work out at home. So take your activity outdoors. The next suggestion I have is set practical goals. And what I mean by that is, when you're making the plan and when you're looking at 3 months ahead, when you're setting a 3 month goal or a 6 month goal, I would highly recommend, instead of saying, let me lose 5 kgs in 3 months, I would highly recommend saying, let's work out 5 times a week for 5 weeks straight. What happens is these goals make more sense, because if you hit this goal of working out 5 times a week for 5 straight weeks, the odds of you losing 5 kgs in 3 months increase much more, right? And it's a more practical goal. So another goal, or rather another suggestion I have, would be to invest in some nice gear, because buying affordable workout gear and workout equipment, especially home gym equipment, has become quite affordable in India, especially quite off rate. And what this means is, it brings about, you're giving yourself respect, because very often I've noticed that we turn up better when someone else expects us to turn up. But when we're turning up for ourselves, we don't put in quite as much effort. We kind of take it easy, we take it for granted. So when you invest in new gear, or when you invest in some nice workout equipment, what happens is, automatically I've seen that the energy changes, posture changes. And with that postural change, you bring about a different kind of energy to the mat, or to whatever space it is that you work out in. And also, we're spending so much time at home, so you're spending so much time not in the gym anymore, you're working out at home. So invest a little bit in that if you can. Another suggestion I have is, ride the wave, because once you put all this effort in, it's inevitable. Inevitably, you will find something that you absolutely love doing. You will settle into a routine that supports your lifestyle, that is challenging, but at the same time not impossible. And once you settle into this nice routine, it's like riding a wave. You've got this momentum going for you. Don't take your foot off the pedal then. Try to stay with it for as long as you can, because you've put in the effort. Things are going your way now. Enjoy it. Revel in that space. And I would also like to stress on the morning routine. I've mentioned it before, but it's worth another mention, because once you start your day right, the odds of you falling off the wagon or getting distracted and eating a whole box of Pringles, for example, is unlikely. However, if you don't start your day right, the odds of you not getting that second session, or eating a giant box of sweets or whatever in the middle of the day, is much higher. So that morning routine is very important. Include meditation into that morning routine. And the reason I emphasize on this aspect of training is because we're not really in control of anything that happens after we wake up. Once your day starts, for the most part, you're dealing with what you're seeing, what you're tasting, what you're smelling, and what you're listening to. So before dealing with any of that, go inwards. Spend a little time going inwards. Focus on your breath, focus on your thoughts, because the only thing that you can really control is how you breathe first thing in the morning. So once you start to get a control of how you breathe first thing in the morning, you also start to get a control of how you think, and then you're ready for the rest of the day. So that morning routine, include meditation into it. And another suggestion is to journal and plan everything, and keep a track of it. Anything that is measured will see more success, as opposed to something that is not measured. And this is the same with training. This is the same with going about making a change in your life and your lifestyle. So write down how you want your day to unfold. Write down what it is that you intend to do in that day. And it could even be small little cues, such as to stay calm in this meeting that's going to start at 3 p.m. Because writing it down in the morning is going to give you a much better shot at doing it in the evening, implementing it in the evening. Lastly, I would say a sound nighttime routine. It's very possible that you can do all this right from before the sun rises, to eat well in the afternoon, work out again in the evening. And at night, you might get carried away and watch 3 hours of something that is really gory and has a lot of excitement that keeps you up at night. Instead of relaxing you, it gets you excited. It gets you nervous or anxious. So your nighttime routine should ideally involve not watching any TV, trying to stay away from electronics. Instead, try to read and try to have an early dinner, get to bed early, and try, if you can, to incorporate some sort of meditation or breathing practice just before getting into bed or while you are in bed, so that you can go to sleep quicker and go into a much deeper state of sleep. So I would say these are some of the suggestions I have.
Wow, these are great suggestions. I think, I mean, you've given quite a bit actually, so we have no reason not to change now.
I hope so. I
And I
hope
re
so.
and I really like the suggestion you gave about no electronics before bed. Even in my personal experience, I've noticed that if I'm watching something before bed, I end up watching for a couple of hours. But if I take a book
Mhm.
and I read, I fall asleep almost immediately. So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, definitely no electronics is a great idea. Thank you so much, Sujay. This was wonderful. This was amazing. And I really, really hope to incorporate a lot of things that you said today into my life and hopefully for the listeners as well. Now, just one last thing before I let you
Yes.
go. Where can our listeners reach out to you, or do you have an Instagram handle or website? How can they reach you if they want to reach you?
Yes, you can reach out to me through my website, mindthebreath.com. That's MIND, the breath, BREATH.com. And you'll have links to my all my handles and my email over there.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure being here and chatting with you today.